If someone had told me that a phone call lasting less than a minute could destroy 10 years of marriage, I probably would have laughed. But I didn't laugh. Not when the caller was my husband. Not when the first thing he said was, "I'm divorcing you." Not when his voice was cold, like he was discussing business. Not when he hung up before I could even ask why. And not when I realized I had no home to go back to. That morning, I was on the 15th floor of the Rosewood Hotel, right in the heart of Chicago, getting ready to step into my third client meeting of the day. I glanced at my phone as the screen lit up. Caller ID. Ethan. My husband. In the past 10 years, he had never called me during work hours. Not when he knew I was on a business trip, not when I was drowning in deadlines. I rushed out into the hallway, phone to my ear, thinking he might be asking if I needed anything for when he picked me up Friday. But no. It wasn't "Did you eat?" or "When are you coming home?" or anything normal. Ethan's voice came through, emotionless, without a hint of remorse. "I'm divorcing you, Diane, and by the way, I've sold the apartment. You'll need to find somewhere else to live." I froze, leaning against the marble wall. It felt like someone had just punched me in the chest. It took me a few seconds to respond, my voice barely steady. "You sold the apartment?" Ethan let out a dry laugh, the kind of laugh that said he thought he'd already won. "Yeah, Ellie and I need the money to start our new life. You know, she deserves a place that's bigger, brighter." Ellie. The name hit like a slap. I had suspected something for months. Those late nights, the sudden business trips, the growing distance in his eyes. But hearing him say her name so casually, as if I was the intruder in their story, tightened something deep in my chest. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, took a deep breath and replied as calmly as I could. "Great. I wish you both the best. I'm Deanne Miller, 36 years old, CEO of a media firm in New York. Ethan and I met when I was in my senior year of college and got married when I was 26. The apartment he said he sold was the place we moved into when we first started building our life together. A small but charming 2-bedroom in West Village. The one where I picked every tile in the kitchen and chose every curtain. I thought it was our home, but to Ethan, it was just another asset to liquidate, just another thing to cash in for a fresh start with someone else. I remember clearly, when we bought that place, we scraped together every penny, worked late nights for almost a year. Back then, I loved Ethan deeply and believed the struggle would be worth it. How ironic. The man who once held my hand through it all was now kicking me out of his life like I was nothing but old furniture. I returned to the meeting room, sat down at the table, smiled at the clients while my mind went completely blank. Only one sentence echoed again and again. He thinks he's won. He thinks he can erase me with one phone call. But there's one thing Ethan didn't know. Something very important. Something that was about to cost him everything. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because I couldn't believe Ethan could stoop that low. Selling the apartment behind my back, then casually announcing it like I was just a temporary tenant. And what shocked me even more was that he thought he had the right to do it. Ethan didn't know that apartment had been under my name for 7 months. It all started earlier this year when we refinanced the mortgage. At the time, the bank suggested transferring ownership to get a better interest rate because my credit score was higher. Ethan, as usual, didn't bother reading the paperwork. He just nodded and signed when I told him it was beneficial for both of us. He had no idea he had just signed away his rights to the apartment. Back then, I never thought I'd need to use that leverage. I did it purely for financial reasons, to lower the monthly payments. I still believed in our marriage, still thought we were a team. What a joke. That night, I sat in my hotel room with my laptop on my lap, hands trembling slightly as I opened our family finance folder. I pulled up the refinancing contract and scrolled to the transfer of title section, and just as I remembered, I was the sole owner. Ethan's name was nowhere on any legal documents tied to the apartment. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part felt a knot rising in my throat. Ethan thought he could sell the apartment, transfer the money, and walk into a new life with Ellie while I struggled with bills. But what he didn't realize was that his own carelessness and arrogance would be the very thing to ruin him. I picked up my phone and called Monica, my close friend and a real estate attorney I trusted completely. "Diane?" she answered after 2 rings, her voice concerned. "What's going on?" "Ethan just told me he sold the apartment," I said, trying to stay calm. Silence. "Can't do that," Monica replied sharply. "That apartment is in your name, yours alone. Unless you signed a sale agreement, the transaction is completely invalid." I let out a long breath, relief washing over me, just as I had hoped, just as the paperwork confirmed. What if he already took money from the buyer? Then Ethan can be sued for fraud. The buyer could file a claim against him personally, and if you want, we can do even more. I nodded, even though Monica couldn't see it. The game had officially begun. Ethan thought he could kick me out of our old life, but he was the one who had no ground to stand on. I hung up, opened the minibar and poured myself a glass of red wine. As the lights of Chicago shimmered through the window, I smirked. I wasn't the kind of woman who'd be knocked down by a phone call. If Ethan wanted to play dirty, fine, but he needed to remember. I held the whole deck. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because my mind wouldn't stop racing. All the pieces started connecting like a strategic map. Ethan thought he was controlling the game, but in reality, he had just moved his king to the center of the board, completely exposed. The next morning I got up early, splashed cold water on my face and opened my laptop. The first thing I did wasn't checking work emails, it was planning my counterattack. I reopened the scanned documents of the apartment and saved 3 PDFs. The ownership transfer agreement, a bank statement proving I had paid off the loan, and the refinancing documents with my name on them. Each page was clear evidence. Ethan had no right to sell the apartment. Next, I called Monica. "I want to start now," I said, my voice firm. "Good. I've reviewed everything, the documents are solid, you have the upper hand. But how do you want to handle it? Soft or direct?" I stared at the wedding photo of me and Ethan on my phone screen, bitterness rising in my chest. "Direct. He doesn't deserve soft." Monica paused for a few seconds, then responded with determination in her voice. "All right. I'll draft a legal notice and send it directly to both Ethan and the buyer. The letter will state that the apartment is solely in your name, the sale is invalid, and any money exchanged could constitute real estate fraud. Also, I need to know, do you want to escalate this? Police? Media?" I thought for a moment. Honestly, I didn't want to cause a scandal. I just wanted Ethan to understand what betrayal and loss felt like. "Not the media, not yet, but if he doesn't back off, I won't hold back." Monica nodded. "You're much smarter than Ethan. We'll do this by the book, step by step. You won't just win, you'll win with grace." I hung up the call, my heart pounding. The helplessness from yesterday had vanished. In its place was a surge of energy. I was taking control. That afternoon, Monica sent me a draft of the legal letter. I sat in the hotel lobby, edited a few lines, added the buyer's name, and signed off. Less than an hour later, both Ethan and the buyer had received the letter. Not long after, Ethan called. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sent him a short message. "All transactions related to the apartment are invalid. Contact my lawyer. Do not call me again." It wasn't because I didn't want to hear his explanation. It was because I had nothing left to hear. From the moment he casually said Ellie's name, every reason, every promise, every memory turned to dust. That evening, Monica called back. The buyer responded. They're furious about being dragged into an illegal transaction. Luckily, they're willing to cooperate. As for Ethan, he hasn't replied. Looks like he's really panicking. I sat up straight, a quiet sense of victory spreading through me. Good, let him know what it feels like to be ignored. What about the divorce? Do you want to start now? I nodded. There was nothing left to delay. Let's do it, Ethan already paved the way. The next day I sent Monica everything. Financial documents, assets, prenuptial agreements if any. Monica texted back a few hours later. You've got nothing to worry about. He's signed so many papers without reading them. In the current situation, Ethan has almost no grounds to fight back. We'll move ahead first. I looked at my suitcase, still unpacked since I arrived in Chicago. I used to think I had just left New York for a few days. Now, I knew. I had left an entire life. And I wasn't going back. I returned to New York on a drizzly afternoon. The city was still as fast-paced and noisy as the day I left it, but everything inside me had changed. I was no longer the woman who stood frozen in a hotel hallway with hollow eyes after hearing her husband declare divorce. I came back with clarity, with a plan, and with evidence in hand. I opened the door to the apartment. The familiar scent of wood and old coffee lingered in the air. The shoe rack was still messy. Ethan's coat was still draped over the chair. But something in the room felt different. Or maybe it was me who had changed. I pulled my suitcase inside, took off my shoes, and stepped into a space I knew I had reclaimed. I figured Ethan didn't know I was back yet. Good, let him be surprised. Around 7 p.m. the door burst open. Ethan stormed in, face flushed, phone in hand, waving a stack of papers. "What the hell is this, Diane?" he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "A legal notice? What the hell are you doing?" I stood in the middle of the living room, strangely calm. His face showed clear shock, mixed with disbelief, like he couldn't comprehend that I would fight back. "I'm not doing anything," I said, arms crossed. "Just reminding you, this apartment is mine. It's ours. We bought it together, paid for it together." I walked over to the file cabinet and pulled out the documents Monica had prepared. I held them up in front of Ethan like a final blow. "After we refinanced back in February, you signed off transferring full ownership to me, remember? Or did you not read the papers, just like always?" Ethan froze. His eyes glanced over the document, then looked back at me. The anger was gone. All that was left was confusion and fear. "You can't do this," he muttered, his voice noticeably weaker. "I already did. And if you keep pretending to own this place and continue trying to sell it, I'll take it one step further. Real estate fraud is no small matter, Ethan." He took a step back, shoulders slumping. But then, as if on instinct, he tried to regain his usual arrogance. "You think you've won. This will come out. I already signed with the buyer, Diane. They won't let it go." I smiled faintly, a smile devoid of warmth. "They've already contacted my lawyer, and they know the truth. Now all they want is their money back, and if you've spent any of it, good luck in court." Ethan's eyes widened. "You're not serious. You think I have time to joke about legal matters?" I saw it clearly. His expression changed, the confidence disappeared, the smugness vanished. Only panic remained. And just as I expected, she showed up. The door opened. A woman with brown hair, heavy makeup, and a tidy outfit walked in, rolling a small suitcase behind her. "Ellie." I knew the moment I saw the shock in her eyes when she spotted me. Diane," she said, then turned to Ethan. "You said she wouldn't be here anymore." I gave a cold smile. "He also said he had the right to sell this apartment." She turned fully to Ethan. "What is going on?" Ethan looked flustered. His hands trembled slightly, as if trying to stop her from asking more. But he couldn't get a word out. I crossed my arms and stepped forward. "Here's what's going on. Ethan tried to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to him. He signed an illegal contract, and now both I and the buyer have grounds to sue him." Ellie's eyes widened. "What?" "That's right," I added. "And you're standing in a place that doesn't belong to either of you. So if you were planning on moving in, sorry, that won't be happening." The room went silent, tension thick in the air. Ethan was breathing heavily, trying to regain control. "Diane, you can't do this." "I can, and I am." Ellie stared at Ethan, her face pale. "You told me this was our place, that you'd sold it and we could move in. The money, where is it?" Ethan opened his mouth, then shut it again. I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction watching it unfold. Not out of revenge, but because, finally, the truth spoke louder. Ellie let go of her suitcase, her voice trembling. "You lied to me too?" Ethan reached out, trying to hold on to something, but she was already stepping back toward the door. "I'm not getting dragged into this mess, Ethan. Goodbye." The door clicked shut behind her like a final verdict. I turned back to Ethan. The man who once promised me forever. Now he sat collapsed on the sofa, his head in his hands, small, lost, and utterly defeated. I said nothing more. I didn't need to. I simply handed him another set of papers. The already signed divorce documents. "Read it carefully this time," I said, and turned toward the bedroom. For the first time in years, I closed the door. Without fear, without hesitation, only peace. I woke up the next morning with a strange feeling. Peace. No more Ethan grumbling from the bathroom about the water being too cold. No more sound of his keyboard clacking late into the night, or the lingering scent of Ellie's perfume in the apartment hallway. Just me, soft sunlight slipping through the curtains, and the familiar hum of West Village below. I made a cup of coffee, stepped out onto the balcony, and watched the yellow cabs weaving through the street. Suddenly this space, this apartment, truly felt like mine. No longer our home. No longer a cage of broken memories from a failed marriage. It was now a place to begin again. That very day, I called Lauren, my best friend from college. She showed up in less than an hour, holding 2 lattes and a croissant. "Ready for the reset?" she asked, eyes sparkling. "More than ever," I replied. We started cleaning and rearranging the apartment, not to erase the past, but to turn everything into a choice that was truly mine. The old wedding photos came down, replaced by paintings I bought at an art fair back when I was single. The cold gray pillows Ethan liked were swapped out for soft beige cushions. I revived the long-forgotten reading nook, bookshelf, warm lamp, a velvet green armchair. I sat down and exhaled deeply. I started over with the smallest things. That evening, I played a playlist from my college days, the one Ethan always mocked as too cheesy, and sprawled across the freshly cleaned couch. I no longer needed to match anyone's aesthetic. No need to ask for approval, every choice now just had to fit me. Monica texted with a divorce update. "Ethan signed. Everything's almost finalized. You're about to be completely free." I stared at the message, my nose stinging a little. Not out of regret, but because I was finally no longer stuck in a relationship that only existed on paper and habit. I decided to take a week off, something I hadn't done since becoming a director. I needed time for myself. Not to escape, but to heal and rebuild, one piece at a time. I wandered through small galleries, stopped by local coffee shops, and reconnected with old friends I'd drifted from while chasing Ethan's version of a stable life. Everyone was surprised at how radiant I looked. "You look lighter," one friend said. I smiled, honestly. Because I'm finally living for myself. For the first time in 10 years. I won't pretend there weren't moments of emptiness that crept up. The silence at night was sometimes too much. Old habits still surfaced. I'd catch myself cooking for 2, or turning to the other side of the bed to say something, then pause. But I didn't push the feeling away. I accepted that emptiness as part of the healing. One evening, I sat down and wrote a new plan for the future. Nothing long, nothing lofty, just a few simple things. Throw myself a small divorce celebration. Start learning how to paint. Something I loved in high school. Read 1 book a month. Travel solo at least once. Not because I needed to prove anything after leaving Ethan, but because I wanted to fill my life with what I loved, not what someone else expected. A week passed quicker than I thought. The apartment had a new energy. I'd rescheduled therapy, started light yoga, and even signed up for a short story writing workshop. I wanted to try, just once, to let my true voice come out. During a trip to buy flowers, I caught my reflection in a shop window. My eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Steadiness and lightness. No one said healing was easy, but I'd taken the first steps, steady, unhurried, and completely on my own terms. I thought everything between Ethan and me ended the day he signed the divorce papers. But life rarely wraps itself up neatly like in the books. The final encounter happened on a Saturday afternoon when I was picking flowers at the shop near my place. I had just lifted a bouquet of white tulips when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Diane?" I turned around, it was Ethan. He looked thinner, his hair messy, his shirt wrinkled, no longer the polished man who once walked confidently through law firm hallways. His eyes no longer held resentment or arrogance. There was something else, a sense of loss. I nodded politely. Ethan. He looked down at the bouquet in my hands and quietly said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I stayed silent, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need that apology anymore. I once needed it, craved it, but not anymore. I had moved past that point. Ethan looked at me, hesitating. I thought I had everything figured out, but then I realized I had lost the most precious thing. I raised my head, looked him straight in the eye. You didn't lose me, Ethan. You never appreciated me enough to realize what you had. What you lost was the chance to start over with someone willing to forgive. But that chance is gone. He bowed his head, no resistance, no pleading, just standing there, a worn-out figure from my past. I turned and walked away without saying another word. Each step was a confirmation. I no longer belonged to the past. 2 weeks later, I hosted a small party at the apartment, now completely my own space. Lauren brought wine, Monica brought a cake that read, To Diane, New Life, New Light. We laughed, played music, shared old stories. No complaining, no tears, just laughter and warmth filling the room. When night fell, I stood alone on the balcony, wineglass in hand, watching the golden city lights stretch out like tiny stars. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I had closed the old chapter. And the best part? I was the one writing the next one. A month after the little divorce celebration, I landed at Florence Airport, Italy. Not because I wanted to escape New York, but because I wanted to touch life with a different pair of hands. No longer strained, no longer controlled. Just living. Simple, free, and honest with myself. I rented a small studio in the old Toronto district, where narrow cobblestone alleys led to quiet cafes and old bookshops that smelled of paper. Every morning, I stepped out with a notebook and pen, sat on a second-floor balcony, and wrote. Not for money, not to prove anything, just to breathe through the words. In the afternoon, I attended a beginner's painting class near the Santo Spirito Square. My hands were clumsy, my brush strokes uneven, but I felt light. Here no one knew I used to be a media executive, or that I had been betrayed by my husband. They only knew me as Diane, a 36-year-old woman learning to see life through color and light. I started talking to strangers more. Luca, the bookstore owner, Zoe, a Canadian student studying Italian, and Matteo, a local photographer who often sat at the corner cafe I liked. One time, Matteo asked me in broken English, "What are you looking for in Italy, Diane?" I smiled. Myself. He nodded, as if he deeply understood, and I thought, maybe I was starting to understand too. Every journey isn't about finding a destination, but about returning to the version of ourselves we had forgotten. That night, I wrote a line in my journal. I used to think freedom was letting go of everything, but now I know, true freedom is no longer being afraid to begin again. Diane's story is proof that sometimes, loss isn't the end, it's the beginning of a new journey. The journey of rediscovering yourself. In real life, anyone can find themselves betrayed, lost, or pushed out of their comfort zone. But if you have the courage to get up, face the truth, and choose to live for yourself, you can turn brokenness into strength and rewrite your story with pride, just like Diane did. What do you think of Diane's journey? Have you ever felt the same way? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and powerful stories about life and family.